Hello everyone, my name is Uyen and my postdoc is about lattice and harmonicity of stereochemically active lone pairs, controls thermochromic band gaps reduction of lead vanadium oxychloride. So here's lead, and you know that lead is everywhere. Lead can be used in lead acid battery, paint, and radiation shielding. Inorganic lead containing compounds are interesting because structural distortion associated with the lone pairs contribute to the magnetic, photocatalytic, and nonlinear behavior. Lead is just one of many metals that have lone pair, and if it's active, then you can see other properties. Lone pair is the pair that is not shared between two atoms and tend to spread out more, causing other bond angles to be pushed down. Here's my story, and let me show you how we came to learn the story. We observed a reversible thermochromic transition at about 200 degrees Celsius in the lead vanadium oxychloride, and this color change was not observed in the barium analog, which does not contain the stereochemically active lone pair. So we observe the color change, and there's also a crystal structure change, but there's something is going on with the electrons. Let me show you how we identify which electrons and which bonds are really involved. First, we have to make the materials. Stoichiometric amounts of the reactants were ground together in a mortar and pestle. The mixture was sealed under vacuum in an ampule. The sample was subsequently heated and cooled in a box furnace using different heating profile. So here are the crystal structures of lead and barium vanadium oxychloride. Let me tell you the importance of the crystal structure that looks really complicated. Barium has a three-dimensional coordination environment, while lead compound has a two-dimensional layer structure with a clear separation which allows for the presence of the lone pair. And this lone pair pushes other atoms to one side, making the lead environment to be asymmetric. Here is the pair distribution function data where we are looking at the correlation between a pair of two nearest neighboring atoms at room temperature and at the thermochromic transition temperature. We can tell if the fit is good or not if the red line is really flat. You know, it looks ripply, but remember that the scale is really close to zero. Overall, this is a really good fit. We can see that generally the yellow and the blue lines match, but if you zoom in 2 to 4 angstrom, which is a little over a bond length, then we can see that there are some differences in the structures between the lead and barium. And why do we want to compare to barium? Because barium has the same structure overall, but it does not have the lone pair. So the PDF fits were worse for lead oxygen and lead chlorine peaks than corresponding barium peaks. This hinted that the bond changes were short range and that long range structural transition was not responsible for the color change. Then we use hard X-ray photoelectron spectroscopy to study the electronic structure on the surface of the material. If we go to an X-ray source and shine high energy X-ray on the sample, it will probe the S electron. So we needed to go to the synchrotron source for high energy source. At first, we put a 2 kilo electron volt of energy on the sample. And sure enough, for lead, we see the peak that corresponds to the 6s electron, but for barium, you see that there's no peak. When we even crank up the energy of X-ray to 5 kilo electron volt, we excited more lead 6s electron. That's why we see it's relatively larger, and even barium, we still don't see it. The electronic structure really involves the lead 6s electron. So warming the lead sample causes the lead lone pair to be stabilized in the anti-bonding state associated with the lead 6p and oxygen. The band gap between lead and oxygen is larger than between lead and chlorine, so we see the red color. But we could figure out through our experiments that the bond between vanadium, oxygen, and lead are correlated. As the vanadium oxygen shrink, the lead oxygen bond expands, or if we heat, it goes reverse. And electronically, what we see the lead 6s electrons through a high-speed experiment result in the color change. So in conclusion, lone pairs are not so lonely after all. We learned that if we use the right techniques, we could observe how the short-range interactions of the lone pair with other atoms resulted in color change when we heat it. And we would like to acknowledge Dr. Larita and Dr. Banerjee for their collaboration with the pair distribution function and hard X-rays photoelectron spectroscopy experiments. Thank you.